Would that be something that is done mostly by the government? Is there a role there for businesses? After all, like you have a company like Bombardier, you used to have BlackBerry, you have some of these other companies that are doing work in Africa already. Is it also not the role of the businesses to see how do we expand our business, be more competitive, let's say with the Chinese? Yeah. That are coming into Africa in large numbers.
Yeah, no, Magnus, you're right. The business community has a strong and important voice to say. I found in the past sometimes, if Canadian businesses are succeeding in Africa, they want to keep it secret because they don't want other Canadian companies to come there because they're doing so well. Yeah. And so we need more of those types of dialogues where our companies are saying to us, it's fantastic opportunities there, and this is how we need to be able to work. Yeah. That's something I think governments, whether it's provincial or municipal governments or even federal governments here, it's important for them to build those relationships. Yeah. I think we've seen. I think some of your research has seen this, that there's an importance of government working very closely with private sector, and likewise private sector working with governments to work in these different markets as well.
Yeah, because also what we see in Africa is a lot of the Western companies and governments that come into Africa go into the minerals. Yeah. Like you see, like in the Congo, with the minerals there, in Mali, in Nigeria for oil, in Angola for oil. So as a result, we don't have this thing that I call overlapping demand, where they sell vehicles to us, we sell vehicles to them. Mm-hmm. And isn't it possible that they say Canadian government or Canadian companies or American government or American companies build vehicles in African countries? Just like you see the Japanese building their vehicles here. How does that happen? Is it, do we have to force it to happen? I mean, is there some sort of a natural process, an organic process that makes that happen in global business? How does that happen?
People don't realize how significant a market Africa is. Yeah. There's a growing and affluent middle class in those countries that would be able to, that could maybe sustain those types of business opportunities in those particular marketplaces as well. There's a slide that I'd like to use in one of my classes that I try to give a visualization of actually how big Africa is. And when you are able to put China in West Africa, you could put the United States, you could put a number of other countries along with all those places. It starts giving the person who's looking at that slide a representation. Africa is that big, and so it's also then them realizing that you need to have different strategies in different parts of Africa, and not necessarily look at the continent as one, but in specific Absolutely. Areas as well. Yeah. So. I think in about 5 or 10 years, Nigeria, with its growing population, will be one of the most significant economic markets in the world. And that's something that we need to be able to tell that story. And I think that's the type of business case that will drive companies to start manufacturing and increase their presence in Africa as well.
Yeah, because something I see is that it seems like the Chinese understand that they have a role in developing Africa, developing the capacity to buy more goods. So they bring infrastructure and all these other things. so that the Africans see that they have real, true partners here in that development process, so that when Africa is strong and on its feet, Africa becomes a good consumer market for their goods. This is the way I see it. But I think in the same vein, maybe what it does, it gives increased capacity to Africans to be able to produce products, to have products in the value chain, even though they are finalized in China, but there is some value added in Africa before it gets to China to be concluded. In that regard, considering, say, Africa and Canada, say the United States, look at North America here, are there particular kinds of goods, services, not services, but goods like that, where we can have a long value chain? And for example, for me, I look at this agriculture, for example. I think that I think that there are, but I'm just asking from your perspective. Do you see any specific kinds of goods along the value chain that can be started in Africa and then concluded in, say, North America, where you have ownership all the way through? So we both own what we start in Africa and own what we conclude in North America.
Yeah, well, the sector that you spoke about, agriculture, and that was one that I thought about right away. It's an area where we certainly have expertise that I think we could sort of share. And having worked in a number of African countries, they're looking for how to take a raw product and make it into a value-added product.
Yes.
And whether it's getting the food processing piece right, and to be able to scale it to a certain way. And I think, again, that's an area that it's something we need to look at. With a growing world population, food continues, and food security continues to be an important issue that we need to be able to focus on. That food would also be supporting people in developed countries as well. So we need to be able to source those types of opportunities. The other one that I think from our perspective here in Alberta and in Calgary, which is sort of energy capital of Canada, the energy transition piece is something I think that we could look at.
Yeah.
We're looking at new clean technologies that are being developed. And in some senses, in Africa, they're helping to leapfrog some of those different technologies. Yeah. And I think there are really opportunities to look at win-win opportunities there. When we look at both energy and we look at food, those are global issues that the entire world is struggling with. So I think that's where I see more opportunities for us to do more things.
I agree with you. But the thing I'm afraid of is that I think that the Western world is pushing on Africa a strategy for development or for trade that I'm not sure that Africans can adequately handle. And that is, say, you take a country like Nigeria, to have a complete conversion from fossil fuels to renewable energy technology.
Yeah.
I don't see Nigeria being able to, let me just say for sure, in the next 10 years, to produce batteries that can store power, to be able to electrify the whole country. They're struggling with the fossil fuels that they have now. Yeah. Much more to go talk about this. So much less to talk about renewable energy. So I am wondering, it is important though, I think, that we get assistance from, say, Canada or whatever country to see how you make that conversion from fossil fuels to renewable energy technologies. But I think that there should be some understanding of what kinds of fossil fuels, maybe the technologies that are needed, maybe they shift more towards gas. Mm-hmm. So I'm thinking that the advanced economies may want to look at some of these African countries and say a pathway to switching would be to optimize the use of fossil fuels in a more climate-friendly way. For example, converting more to, say, gas. I don't know, because for me, I don't see much of Africa being able to make that switch even in
Yeah.
the next 30 years.
Well, that's also a struggle within Canada itself,
Yeah.
right? Again, here in Alberta, we have a somewhat similar challenge that Nigeria is having. We're an oil-producing region, and suggesting again that we need to use cleaner fuels like natural gas to be able to look at supporting the world. And in some cases, I think the solutions that we have that we're proposing might help other jurisdictions in the world. And I think again, I don't want to look at Africa as a continent, but look at the country by country basis.
yeah.
And each country will have to have, in a sense, unique strategies that we'll need to look at.